worldwide at WOLDCnews.com.
Welcome to the Carl Nelson Show
on Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio and live around the world on WOLDCnews.com.
Thank you for staying with us, folks. Momentarily, Mark from Anaheim is going to join us. Again, the number to call in to speak to Mark, 800-450-7876. So let's finish with Brother Ray and also Dr. Dowdy. Brother Ray, the question I asked you, the anticipation of what our people are thinking about, they think that elected officials can really have the power to make those changes. I want to get your thoughts.
Well, in my opinion, the people have the power, but the people are not exercising their power. We elect people and we put them in office, and then we leave them to have to deal with this wicked system, a system that is controlled by money. Money rules in all matters as far as they are concerned. So they sell us out at every turn, and it's evident in our cities. It's evident where we are being gentrified out of our out of our communities. Our homes are being foreclosed on. They're being foreclosed illegally by banks that are controlled by these corporations, and they are putting us out and bringing in Europeans. As Mr. Trump said, he wanted some more blonde-haired, blue-eyed people in America, and they're doing a job of it. And Washington, D.C. is a prime example of how it has come from chocolate city now to vanilla city. And we sat back and we were a part of that. We didn't do anything to change it. Same thing here in Miami. It is now, I call it North Cuba. And it's because the people in this country have not gotten together and dealt with it to hold on to what we fought for and built. As I've said, our blood, sweat, and tears are in this soil. And I'll be damned if I'm going to just walk away and let them continue to do what they do without at least giving some opposition to what they are about doing and exposing those who are doing it. Instead of being their buddies and signing up for 30 pieces of silver and assisting them in running us out and killing our young people on the street and miseducating us and denying us access to loans and businesses.
All right, Brother Ray, and I thank you for sharing that with us, Dr. Dowdy. I also thank you, too, for your participation. Wish we had more folks to call in, and that's what we want to talk about. You know, folks got to be critical thinkers. You got to question everything. Mark from Anaheim's on deck. He'll tell you anything that you hear him say, look it up. He says, don't believe me. He'll tell you in a heartbeat that you should look it up. Don't accept anything that he's got to say. And that goes for anybody who you hear on this radio station, folks. If they say something, research it. And not only research what they say, research the people and who are behind them as well. So, again, I thank you guys for calling us, but now we're going to switch over to Mark from Anaheim. Those of you who don't know, Mark from Anaheim spent his first 5 years roaming the streets of Harlem before being sent to segregated Jim Crow's Johns Island. That's in South Carolina, lived with an aging grandmother. He's listed in International Who's Who of Professionals, and he's a former member of many of the globalist organizations, which few ever hear about. He's also provided briefings to NATO, U.S. Department of Defense, and U.S. Department of State regarding less than lethal and non-lethal technology. He's both a retired U.S. Marine Corps Mustang infantry officer as well as a retired LAPD patrol supervisor who has trained thousands of law enforcement, armed forces personnel worldwide regarding survival tactics and counterterrorism. So now he's retired, but since retiring, he has returned to his life, as his words now, folks, a lazy surfing beach bum, where he spends much of his time coaching and mentoring some of the most successful young female surfers from around the world. Mark from Anaheim, welcome back to WOL Radio.
Good afternoon, Mr. Nelson. I'm assuming that you were giving the audience or listeners introduction on me.
I certainly was.
Well, no, the reason I'm asking, I'm not giving you a hard time, is just I'm letting you know I can't hear you. So
okay.
What happens is when you call my name is when I can hear you. So I'm just going to have to pretend that I know what's going on since all these folks think I'm psychic anyway, right? How you doing, Mr. Nelson?
We're doing great.
You know, before we get started today, as I always do, for those who may not be familiar with me, nothing I say on this show, of course, is the the viewpoints of the owners of this station or the network. They're my opinions. I do not belong to any political party. I do not belong to any political organization. I am a former member of many globalist organizations, and I cut my ties back in 1992 when I started for the first time with my skills being lifted from my eyes, seeing exactly how politics works in this country. And so I have no political loyalty. So you're not going to hear me come on this show and praise one party over another because, there's corruption throughout. There's some good folks throughout, but there's some corruption throughout. And I just want the listeners to know, I always say don't believe anything I tell you. I won't come on the show and lie to you, but don't just take what I tell you as the gospel. You go out, do your own research, and you make up your own mind. But to this day, Mr. Nelson, have you ever had anybody come on the show and tell your listeners that I've actually lied to them?
No.
And there you go.
And this goes back years.
All you got is your word. So today I'm dedicating the show in memory of the unfortunate plane crash involving those from the continent of Africa. That's Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya. That region has been dealing with so much that we don't hear about in the media over here, and it's just that was a tragic incident that's going to have reverberations for some time to come. So today I dedicate the show to any and all those who out there whose lives have been touched by someone you may have known on that plane, and I extend my condolence.
Well, let's start then. Let's get this ball rolling. Let's start with Trump's visit to Vietnam for that summit with North Korea.
Yeah, what about
it? Tell us what was behind all of that.
Well, I think the so-called U.S. Korea banner was a cover. It was more, in my opinion, of a U.S. Vietnam. I've been trying to tell folks for quite a while. Well, guess we can go back. I'm not proud of it. I've said it on this show before, but I'm not going to lie to you folks. Back in the late 70s, I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, and we had a guy coming back from Vietnam named Robert Garwood. And the propaganda that had been put out at that time was that Robert Garwood had been a traitor in Vietnam. Then all of a sudden, he just reemerges on the U.S. Soil. They had him working at a supply over in Camp Lejeune. I was going to college in Charleston at the time, so I was going to take a trip down to Camp Lejeune and take him out, until some old white colonel sat me down and told me to shut up, buy him a drink, and listen. And I didn't realize, you can't believe the hype. So much of what you believe, folks, that you just read in the media, you're being lied to. And I was young, dumb, and one of those guys who was brainwashed, thinking that I was fighting for God, country, and Corps in the Marine Corps. So I saw a very similar thing, by the way, with Bull when Bergdahl came back. Same kind of propaganda. So I knew there was something up. Because what I'm trying to tell you is Garwood had information that we still had many U.S. personnel over in Vietnam. Garwood couldn't be allowed to come back in the late 70s now, since, the war, Mr. Nelson, had already ended, during the Nixon years. So what I didn't know at the time was Carter was already cutting deals with the government of Vietnam to establish trade. So, Garwood coming back talking about live U.S. personnel still over there that he personally saw, that would throw a wrench into that whole economic program that's being set up. The war is over. Okay, let's deal business. In fact, Mr. Nelson, you know who was the number one producer of white rice in the world in 1961?
Who was that?
Vietnam. You know where Vietnam gets their rice from now?
Who?
United States.
Wow.
People talk about Agent Orange. Agent Orange was a defoiler, but Agent Blue destroyed the soil. So what I'm just telling you folks is, as I'm speaking to you right now, places like Cameron Bay are being dredged to accommodate and house United States naval vessels. China has become the big boy on the block. We're heading towards things like the 5G software. Well, China is far ahead of everybody else with 5G software. And China is starting to flex its muscles in that whole Asian region. So there have been lots of debates and disputes with Vietnam and China over certain islands. And I believe that the United States will have just like the Russians have a naval base in Syria, we're going to have a naval base in Vietnam. Also, billions of dollars in contracts for Boeing and the 737 were done the same week that Trump was there. Most of you probably didn't know that. So, yeah, that whole summit with the North Korean thing, I think, was a cover for a more important Vietnam-United States trade relations.
So his reluctance then to call out Boeing and have them stop the planes flying, you think was because they just signed a big contract, or they were?
Well, it's a lot deeper than that. Boeing has just opened a plant in China too, not too long ago. You know, folks, see, when Trump talks about bringing jobs back here, let me just take Boeing for example. Boeing has opened a plant in Vietnam, has opened a plant in China, and Mr. Nelson, you know, Southwest Airlines, they're going to take a big hit because the 737 is the backbone for Southwest Airlines. Now, Southwest Airlines is already going through contractors disputes, and I know, you know, this question you're asking me, I mean, this is a show that could take 2 weeks to answer this. For me personally, it goes back to 1981 when I was watching air traffic controllers on strike in Washington, D.C., and I kicked myself because I have these photographs somewhere and I can't find them. But Ronald Reagan basically destroyed the union starting back then because he told air traffic controllers they didn't go back to work. He wasn't going to give them their jobs back even if they won their dispute, and sure enough, Reagan didn't bring them back. So the thing you don't ever hear about them, Mr. Nelson, is Reagan replaced air traffic controllers with people who used to work in armed forces air traffic centers. So you get some guy who was working in the tower at Marine Corps Air Station, Beaufort, South Carolina. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing, working at LaGuardia or Dulles or National. Mr. Nelson, we'll never know how many people's lives were needlessly killed during the early 80s, mid-80s because of planes that were crashing as of errors based on air traffic controllers that were overwhelmed because Reagan replaced them with so-called military air traffic controllers. I wish I was making it up, but this is not something I would be flipping or joking about. I'm serious as a heart attack when I tell you this. Well, you look at today.
Hold that thought right there, Mark. Yeah, we're going to take a short break. I'll let you tell us about today, what happened today. Folks, you too can join us. Mark from Anaheim is our guest, and the number to call is 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls after this short break on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton inviting you to the national
daily 4 to 7 p.m. on WOL News Talk 1450 AM and 95.9 FM.
And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim, and the number to call to speak to Mark is 800-450-7876. Before we left, Mark was helping us connect the dots between Trump's Vietnam summit and that Ethiopian air crash. So, Mark, I'm going to let you finish your thought. All right, Mark, I'm going to let you finish your thought.
Oh, so I'm back?
Yes, sir.
You know, with this system, you'd be talking about my mama, and I wouldn't know because I can't hear anything until I hear you say Mark. So anyway, you just make sure you say Mark. That'll be my cue to come back on. So anyway, what I was saying before the break was, you know, we'll never know how many people's lives were lost because we had incompetent or overwhelmed air traffic controllers who used to be on military bases where, you know, they're highly restricted areas, very low volume of airplanes compared to what's going on in multinational, international, commercial airline airports. Reagan didn't care. So, you know. You fast forward today, you now have Boeing opening plants in China, Vietnam, all over the world. And I have these ignorant Tea Party folks who will come on my Facebook site and go, look at the contract Boeing got. See, that's more jobs for the U.S. They keep repeating this mantra. What the hell are they talking about? So I'm going to say to you, Mr. Nelson, what I was going to say before the break. And I know you and I had a conversation about this off the phone recently, so now you should be able to answer this question. Is it not true that as much as 75% of all mechanic work on the prominent airlines in this country are not even done in the United States?
That's correct.
Is it not true that countries like El Salvador, Mexico, Chile, Argentina, and even China are where the mechanics are that work on the United States commercial airline planes?
That's true. So
Isn't
how did
China
that come about?
Supposed to be one of our enemies?
Yeah.
So let me get this right. I'm flying on a United States commercial airline on a plane that was serviced by a guy in a country that's supposed to be our enemy. I'm surprised we haven't had more crashes because that's what's going on. So once again, don't believe anything I tell you. You do your own research and make up your own mind. But here's the kicker, Mr. Nuss, because we didn't talk about this offline. You are aware that the State Department issued a travel advisory regarding Ethiopia 2 days before that crash, right?
No, did not know that.
Great. I guess I won't have any phone service or internet for the next 2 weeks now.
Wow. I did not know that.
Folks, don't listen to me. Go do your own research and make up your own mind. It reminds me a little bit of when in Rwanda. I know I did a show with you about Rwanda because I had some major problems. I've seen the movie Hotel Rwanda, and they talk about this great hero and all that. That's great. But the one thing that I'm on your show and I talked about Rwanda was when the Hutus and the Tutsis had gotten together and had decided on peace, the mistake they made was the leader for both tribes, for lack of a better term, were on the same airplane, and that plane mysteriously got shot down by somebody who never took credit. I'm not going to tell you I have any personal knowledge on this crash, but I think there's a little bit more here than the so-called computer ignoring the humans that were trying to override the system when the computer was going down. I believe Boeing's going to take the fall for this. I believe Ethiopian Airlines is going to take the fall for this, but I think there's a little bit more to this story that we're probably not going to hear about for some time to come, if ever.
So would you look on the casualty list then?
Absolutely. I always do. Just like when a buddy of mine from LAPD blew up in a bomb in a garage here in North Hollywood, and he was the guy who told everybody what really happened when this army plane blew up over and coming out of Germany. And when he saw one of his own devices on that plane, he knew what was going on. You always look at the manifest. It's like murder. I don't dwell on who did it. I dwell on who benefits. When it comes to things like a major casualty like this, I don't dwell on pilot error and stuff like that. I look and say, who's on that plane? But that's because of my background.
So was there anybody on that plane of significance that we should know about?
Well, I think everybody's life is significant, Mr. Nelson, but I will say we had 19 prominent individuals on that plane from the United Nations. This country right now is headed by the John Birch Society. I challenge anybody to come on the show and call me a liar when I say name me just one person in Trump's cabinet that's not a member of the John Birch Society, and the John Birch Society hates the United Nations. That's why Trump didn't give a damn about this when this first happened. It ain't about black. You folks are always talking about black and white. If you want to worry about blacks, go watch the movie White Boy Ricky and see how they treat that white boy. Okay? It ain't about black and white. This is about wealth and, as they said, the haves and the have-mores. And when it comes to that flight, first thing I saw, the red flag for me was 19 folks from the United Nations. Oh, come on. I mean, Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, that's a hotbed, man. Kenya right now has got Arab Prince and his boys building a damn Air Force over there with their private contractors. Somalia, they're killing people left and right in Somalia. You don't hear about it in the news here. Ethiopia's right there on the border, too. They still think the Ark of Covenant's there. They want that land. They call Ethiopians and Somalis the darkest Caucasians on the planet because white folks can call you what they want to call you. That's not even Africa. When Clinton sent the U.S. into Somalia, that was Southwest Asia. By the way, you know what the headquarters was in Somalia when the United States landed there, right?
Oh, what was it?
Conoco Petroleum. That was the official headquarters for the Marines when they landed it. In fact, when the Marines landed in Somalia, they tried to build these crappy amphibious landings, and the only people on the beach was news journalists, so they cut that and they didn't show that for us. By the way, you're talking to a Marine Corps infantry officer, retired major, who refused to go to amphibious warfare school because I don't train people to go to get killed. And amphibious warfare is that's suicide. You'll never do a successful amphibious operation except in a place like Somalia where only the news reporters are on the beach when you land there. But white folks like to die in combat. So, like in Forrest Gump, you took away my chance to die. Like D-Day. They keep talking about D-Day. That's suicide. That's stupidity, man. But they got to reduce the population. So, yeah, look at the manifest.
Well, let me ask Eric Prince. You mentioned starting, a school, if you will, or starting something, a business in Kenya.
School?
Who's paying?
I'm telling you, he's building a private contract Air Force there. What school are you talking about?
Who's writing the check?
School? Well, they might have a school to train people to kill, okay?
Yeah.
Like they're training people on the border of Colombia and who knows, maybe Guyana right now to go into Venezuela. He had counterinsurgency killed. The things we do at School of Americas and stuff. But, you make it sound like he's doing some benevolent Girl Scout thing here.
No, yeah.
Eric
check
Prince
that.
is not only John Birch, he's part of that Knights of Malta clique that want to get rid of the Pope because they want to kill all Muslims. Never mind that Eric Prince lives in a Muslim country. Okay? But, we're over here, we're stupid, so we don't even see the hypocrisy and ignorance. But I'm sorry.
Who's paying it?
What were you asking?
Yeah, who's writing the check for it?
Well, the sister is Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. Come on, Mr. Nelson. You got people like the Koch brothers. You got people like the Mercers. You got the DeVosses. These are multi-billionaires. I've come on this show now several times. I'm going to tell you this again today. You got guys like Elliot Abrams and Barr who are back from Iran-Contra, okay? Folks, you're listening to a guy who helped bail Ollie North out of jail. I can't stand Ollie North, another John Birch Society jerk. But when he testified to Congress, they promised him immunity, and they tried to go after him afterwards. So I was like, hey, if it hadn't been for Ollie North, I wouldn't be able to tell you all about the plan to round up all black folks, because Ollie North came right out and said that during the Iran-Contra hearings. That's how I knew about Operation Garden Plot and Rex 84. Thank you, Ollie. But, they shut him down after that and took it behind closed doors. But before they did, he put that out in public air. So I'm just saying, when Ollie North came out and told people what was really going on, then Congress tried to go after him. I didn't think that was fair, so I, along with some other people with my background, we raised a legal defense fund to help get him out. And, of course, the ACLU was the one that bailed him out. These white folks, far right-wing, they hate the ACLU till they get in trouble, and they go right to the ACLU. That's who got Ollie North out. Why am I telling you this? The difference back then was people in this country were still conscious. The difference back then, they used money that had been taxpayers' dollars. And Congress had already passed the Boeing Amendment. So a lot of things that the Reagan administration was doing down in El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, all those countries where the people are fleeing and coming up here now because refugees, well, they use congressional money, taxpayers' money, so that was breaking the law. Today, they don't need to use our money. You got the Mercers, you got the Coles, you got the Koch brothers, you got all these far right-wing folks out there who they can put up the private funding, and guess what? Congress won't be able to investigate them because they're not using taxpayer money. That's what you got today. See, that's what I learned from the Iran-Contra hearing.
So, Mark, the people coming up from
today, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're wealthier, and they're more fanatical because today, unlike back then, people were still dealing with the draft, so to speak. We have no draft today. You got people out there who are doing 10, 15 tours and people patting them on the back like they're some hero. And in Vietnam, if you did more than 2 tours, they sent you to a psychiatrist. These guys have no lives because they have no jobs when they come home. They kill. That's all they know is kill. And they will kill for anybody who's going to pay them $125,000 a year tax-free as long as they stay outside the United States for 9 months or more. They'll go to Dubai and get their Russian hooker and stay over there. Instead of spending $31,000 on a United States troop who has to follow rules and regulations, no, they'll spend $125,000 on a private contractor who doesn't have to answer to anybody. And you don't hear about them in the news. That's what you're dealing with, Mr. Nelson. I just call a spade a spade.
All right. The folks who are moving up from...
And Eric Prince is the leader of it. And meanwhile, Ollie North now is running the NRA, and they're building their brown shirts here in the U.S. while they're building their SS around the world. Sigal!
The folks who are moving up from Central America and South America coming up on the camping on the border.
Yes,
why?
I think I just alluded to that. I mean, when you got people back in the 80s, we're going down to Nicaragua and, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. I mean, this thing has been going on for decades, Mr. Nelson, because natural resources. Now, I will say this country for a long time was an isolationist country. And if you notice how we have the U.S.-Mexico border as we know it today, Mr. Nelson, but I ask you a question. Are the natives in Mexico, do they look any different than the natives from California, Arizona, or New Mexico?
No.
So, because of the isolationist type of attitude, the U.S. just decided not to push the border further down and make all that United States. Why? They would have to assimilate all those heathens, savages, brown-skinned people. This is supposed to be a white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant country. They already had to deal with the Negroes here. They don't need no more, Native Americans, under the doctrine of discovery. Kill them all. They ain't Christians. Kill them. Shoot them. Kill them. Kill their buffalo, too. But they didn't need to push any further south because to push further south, we got a break coming up, so I'll finish this on the other side.
All right, thank you. 800-450-7876 to speak to Mark. Your call's next on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
If you owe any money to the IRS, you need to call this toll-free number right now. 800.
Rolling with us, folks. I guess this mystery man, his name is Mark from Anaheim. As most of you know, that's not his real name. He's really not from Anaheim, and that's a whole nother story. So let's go back to Mark. Mark? Yeah, Mark, we're ready for you now. Because Mark can't hear us.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Woo, I'm back. I only called 3 times to get back in. Hey, I must have upset somebody when I said doctrine of discovery. Anyway, so before the break, what I was just saying that, we stopped the border today at what we know as present-day Mexico border because basically the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants didn't feel like having to deal with all those other brown-skinned savages. Or they would have taken it all the way down, and I hate this term America here because this is not America. This is part of America. This is the United States of America. America is everything from the top of North America to the bottom of South America. And yet people walk around. It's like Israel. So, Mr. Nelson, if I'm a Palestinian but I live in Israel, am I not an Israeli?
You would think so.
Oh.
There's a lot of Palestinians who live in Israel.
Exactly. But when they say Israeli, by the way, folks, Palestinians are Negroes, if you didn't know that. When they're saying Israelis, they're talking about white folks who are not Semites because they're not even born there. They come from other parts of the world and moved to Israel. The Palestinians, the Negroes, they're the real Semites. Anyway, I digress. But I'm just saying to you, so when you look at what's going on down in Central America, you had countries like France, because they still occupy elite areas like Haiti. The United States didn't want European countries coming down in our so-called backyard and sending their militaries down here because after they finish with that country, they might try to do something to us. So European Americans in this country cut deals with European countries and said, if you have a problem down there, we'll take care of it for you. And that's what we do. So you take a country like Argentina. The word Argentine means is white is silver. So you got white folks from other countries running a brown country. And when the Argentinians can't control their brown people, we have things like the Falkland War, the Malvinas Islands, as I call it. Yeah. And that's how it is everywhere. And when they have natural resources that the brown-skinned people want a fair shake on or don't want to share with you, we put in somebody who supports the white, the Anglos, and we take their oil. We take their rubber. We take whatever they got. Been going on since, since the time that so-called Christopher Columbus and these folks found this land, sir. Nothing new.
Some people think, some people think that's what the United States should do.
Well, I don't know what some people are because I just put it this way. Do unto others as you would like them to do unto you.
Mark, before I take any calls for you, we had a discussion about it seems like black men are becoming the poster boys for inappropriate behavior.
Who's this we? You speaking French or what? You talking about you and me?
Yeah, French.
Oh.
French, oui.
I mean, we bien sûr.
Yeah.
Reputation,
So, your thoughts on that? Are they using black men, holding black men up and saying, this is the epitome of this particular...
I have a question for you, Mr. Nelson.
Okay.
Hasn't the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement and a lot of people who come on your show jump up and down and celebrate as we tear down these white icons from the Civil War? Don't we do that?
We? Again?
Don't we celebrate when they tear down a statue of Robert E. Lee or somebody like that?
Right. Yeah.
Then why you all whining now when they're taking down your black icons? You think they're going to let you get away with that and don't come back at you? You didn't even see it coming, did you? Now, first of all, let me just say this, okay? Full disclosure here. Even though one of my offspring was a elementary through high school friend of one of the Michael Jackson attorney's offspring, once again, what I'm sharing here is just my own opinion. And even though I nearly shot Michael Jackson back in the 80s, he and Cullen McCulkin, my opinion here, I'll just say that Michael Jackson and O.J. Simpson had that syndrome of Oprah Winfrey, too. Well, apparently Snoop Dogg, too, because Snoop Dogg, Michael Jackson, Oprah Winfrey, they got these homes out there in Santa Barbara that's going to bring them all down. Even from the grave, Michael, they're going to bring you down for going to racist Nazi Santa Barbara County, because that's where the wealthy Nazis live, Mr. Nelson. I love it when people think California is some liberal state, Mr. Nelson. You go to the Bay Area, or go to Silicon Valley. See how white it is. See how wealthy they are, and see how racist they are. You take a guy like Zuckerberg. Facebook was down yesterday. I wonder how many people committed suicide because they couldn't get on Facebook or Instagram yesterday. And who created Facebook, Mr. Nelson? Who gets credit for creating Facebook?
Oh, I say Zuckerberg.
And who's his mentor?
Who's his mentor?
Rupert Murdoch.
Rupert Murdoch,
so
yeah.
You folks think that Facebook's a liberal because you guys repeat the crap. I have people tell me, the liberal media. Liberal media? Name me somebody who's going to bring me on this radio station beside Mr. Nelson. Thank you, Kathy Hughes. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. That's how liberal we are, okay? This ain't a liberal state. This ain't a liberal country. Never has been, never will be. And people just keep repeating the lie long enough and they start believing it. So you take a place like Santa Barbara, Mr. Nelson, Vandenberg Air Force Base. It used to be Camp Cook. That's what used to house. That was one of 7 of our biggest German POW camps during World War II. At the end of the war, they didn't go back to Germany. They settled in Santa Barbara, Lancaster, Palmdale, Seal Beach, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach. They had the big scandal down here with the white children at Newport Beach Harbor High School, Mr. Nelson, right? Saluting Sieg Heil with their SWAT stickers, and everybody's acting all shocked. Mr. Nelson, weren't you out here in 1990s?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the First DME Church?
Yeah.
Do you know that there was a plan to blow up the First DME Church and shoot all the people inside that church?
I heard about that. Was it real or was that a rumor?
Who was planning on doing that? White surfers right here.
Who was doing that?
White surfers right here from Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, and Seal Beach. ATF, LAPD, and FBI did a task force that took them down. Didn't get much media attention because, we were distracted by all the black churches that were being burned around the Deep South at the time. Those white kids, first of all, I don't think many of them did any time. And the ones who did, their children are probably ones going to Newport Harbor High School now, just perpetuated. Now that Trump's in the White House, I see 88 all the time now on the beach. For you folks who are ignorant, 88, that's the letter HH, Heil Hitler. So I see the SWAT stickers now, and I see the 88s, and I see all the other Nazi symbols that I recognize every day because, after all, many of my mentors were former Nazis from World War II Germany, so I know what it means. Now that Trump's in the White House, please, they're out in the open now. They don't even hide it anymore. So, that's what's going on nationwide. So when you take a situation like what's going on with this so-called, you were saying about the black icons, Michael Jackson's going to move his Neverland to Santa Barbara County? What an idiot. Santa Barbara is where they made all the racist movies back before they came to Hollywood. That's where they made most of your silent movies. You're talking wealthy Nazi folks. Oh, by the way, for you folks from South Africa, when Mandela took over, and for you guys who don't know it, Carl Nelson was the first journalist to interview Nelson Mandela when he was freed from prison. But those white Afrikaners who had the money to flee, number 1 place they fled to was New Zealand. The number 2 place they fled to, Orange County, California. I run into them all the time in Laguna Beach, Dana Point, Newport Beach. Big houses up on the hill. That's where those money folks are. That's what put Trump in the White House, by the way. They said they're talking about the deplorables. White folks with money put Trump in the White House, and Trump is taking care of those white folks with money. How your taxes doing this year, folks, that supported Trump? So, I'm just telling you. So when it comes to black icons, Mr. Nelson, they can't come up with any recent blacks, so they got to pull out Bill Cosby more than 20 years ago, Michael Jackson more than 20 years ago, and dead, O.J. Simpson. Most children today don't even know who O.J. Simpson is, so they have to bring out an HBO special on O.J. Simpson more than 20 years ago. R. Kelly more than 20 years ago. But I learned all this from, KFI right here in L.A. was a station that had the number 1 talk show host, Tom Likas. Clear Channel started buying up all the radio stations, took over KFI. They got rid of Tom Likas, replaced him with Daryl Gates. I know Daryl Gates. So when Daryl Gates retired from LAPD, he took over Tom Likas. Took over his Tom Likas spot. So in retaliation, that's when I started doing shows with you, Mr. Nelson. Of course, I lasted a lot longer than Daryl Gates did on the radio. But I say this to you because when Clear Channel bought up all these AM radio stations, they came out with the right-wing propaganda. And the one thing I learned from KFI that I know wasn't intended for, especially for people as myself to hear, some white woman came on KFI talking about this black guy in Texas, 16-year-old, who had committed a heinous crime. And he goes, we plan on using him as the poster child for all crimes similar to that. And that's when I realized that was the work. That was the recipe. As soon as they can find one person of color who may be responsible or at least suggested to be responsible for a heinous act, that's the person they will put out there as if that is the kind of crime that we as a group do all the time. Meanwhile, people who are melanin challenged do it on a far less basis. So I'll give you an example, Mr. Nelson. Oh, by the way, I should tell you that white teenager that she was alluding to in Texas turned out to be completely innocent of the crime that he was originally arrested for, because they never came back and said that. But you take Michael Vick. People think Michael Vick, you say poster child for animal cruelty, Michael Vick. So it's okay to take Michael Vick's dogs and give it to a white woman who's now in charge of an animal care. Never mind, that white woman was one of the founding members of a satanic church that has been known to allegedly have killed people. So Michael Vick is a worse animal owner than a white woman from a satanic church involved with murders. I'm sorry, folks. Don't believe me. Look it up for yourselves. So you take Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson.
Wait, give the name first, Mark. The
woman. What? The church is called the Church of the Process.
Okay.
And for you folks out there who ever watched the movie Eyes Wide Shut, they show that symbol in that movie during one of their little satanic rituals. Anyway, so, you take a guy like Michael Jackson. Now he's supposed to be the poster child for child molestation. So now you folks are going to talk about Michael Jackson to distract you from the largest sex scandal involving the Archdiocese of Chicago. Instead, you're talking about Michael Jackson and Jussie Smollett. That's what you're talking about in Chicago. You're not talking about the Archdiocese in Chicago. Hang on. We got another break coming up.
All right. That's, we do. I'll let you finish that story on the other side. And we got a bunch of folks who want to speak to you as well. 800-450-7876. You too can join the discussion. Take your calls after this short break on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
This update is sponsored by Account Temps. Need additional staff to support your month-end project?
FM.
And thanks for staying with us, folks. I guess it's Mark from Anaheim. Again, the number to call if you got a question for Mark is 800-450-7876. Before we get back to him, let me tell some of the folks who are going to be stopping by next week. We continue our salute to women, especially black women. Let's turn the spotlight on them in Women's History Month here on WOL. Our next person is going to be Gwen Moore, Congresswoman Gwen Moore, I should say, from the great state of Wisconsin. They, in fact, they're going to be holding, at least I think it's Milwaukee, going to be having the DNC in 2020, so we can talk to her about that. Also, metaphysician Dr. B is going to join us as well. So if you're in the DMV, tell all your friends to keep their radios locked on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. So Mark, I'm going to let you finish your thought. Then we got a bunch of folks who got questions for you.
Ooh, I'm back on the air?
Yes, sir.
Too strong, too black. So for you listeners out there, I know you got some research warriors out there. I apologize in advance because it may be difficult for you to find. But, I live here in Orange County. So here in Orange County, since we got wealthy white folks, we don't use terms like the John Birch Society. We say the Welch Foundation. That way you don't really know, but it's the John Birch Society. And for many years, Mr. Nelson, what was considered the number one county for Republicans in the whole United States?
Orange County?
You got it. So let me enlighten you folks and give you a little tip here on what to do some research on. And now with the internet, you might be able to find it a lot easier than trying to find it in a library. But there's a book called The Big Orange. The Big Orange, The History of Republican Politics in Orange County from 1950 to 2000. I say that again, The Big Orange, The History of Republican Politics in Orange County, 1950 through 2000. Now, that book with Mr. Nelson was written by Lois Lundberg, woman from La Habra, or as we say out here, Guadalajara, because, there's so many Mexicans from La Habra, Guadalajara there. In fact, I even married one. So I'm just telling you, so if you folks want an insight into the Welch Foundation here in Southern California, Mitt Romney had to come, Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney. The first thing Mitt Romney did after he lost to Obama was come down here. You know that, right, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I heard he had a place down there.
Well, he's got one in La Jolla, so he's right on the north in Orange, southern Orange County, northern San Diego County. I had to come check in with the Welch Foundation, of course. So I'm just telling you folks this, but once again, Lois Lundberg, The Big Orange, The History of Republican Politics. Now, how do I know this? Mr. Nelson?
How?
Who do you think they used to invite to their parties?
Oh, you?
I was always the token Negro And they always, when local television would be there, they would always make it a point to have me in it. That way it looks like it's a well-rounded and, yeah, of course. Like I told you, I was a member of many of these so-called think tanks that fed into the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bohemian Grove. And, since you folks love Obama so much, let me just tell you who put Obama in office out of Chicago. You have a committee called the Chicago Committee on Global Affairs. You guys do your homework on that one. Chicago Committee on Global Affairs. Ever heard of them, Mr. Nelson?
No, I have not.
Exactly. Vote for change my butt. I told you all that. Obama was the best Republican they put in since Bubba Clinton. And, Bubba Clinton. Did you just mention the DNC, Mr. Nelson?
Yes, sir.
It was Bubba Clinton and Hillary under the DNC that sold the Democratic Party out. That's when they became, a Republican light. They started taking the money from the same wealthy donors that the Republican Party were getting. So you folks who think the Democratic Party is going to save you, they're not. If they have somebody like a Bernie Sanders who threatens them, they'll just come in with their super delegates and lie and tell you that Hillary won West Virginia, that kind of thing. So I hope that helps answer your question, Mr. Nelson. But I'll just say this. 2020 is going to probably be one of the ugliest election years that we've seen since the time they tried to take out Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the coup attempt. Politics is going to be ugly because if you threaten to take Trump out and impeach him, what do you think is going to happen, Mr. Nelson?
He's going to resist, of course.
Dude, I don't care about Trump. I'm asking you about these dumb white folks who follow him.
Oh yeah, because they were already getting their weapons together already.
Oh, they're getting their weapons together. For you folks out there who research, why don't you research this one? Thousands of guns and ammunition stolen from ATF in West Virginia. Yeah, that's one for y'all to do some They're getting their weapons, Mr. Nelson. They're putting them together right now. And liberals, you liberals, y'all don't like guns. You're going to go out in the streets singing Kumbaya. Well, they're shooting you down like the slaughter. Hey, I wish I was joking, but I'm not joking. By the way, Mr. Nelson, because you won't. Two significant dates I remind you folks of that you're not going to hear in U.S. media. First one is April 6th coming up. I don't recommend you fly on that day. Don't really listen to me. Just do your own research. April 6th, 2019, all GPS may fail. I say this again. For you all doing your little internet searches, April 6th, 2019, all GPS may fail. Then the other date is April 15th. Now, April 15th, most of us in this country think a tax day. Thank God for the Postal Service that y'all letting them get rid of, because once you get rid of Postal Service, you won't be able to write that check on April 15th and get that stamp on it last minute. But April 15th, internationally, folks, U.S. media is not telling you this. Worldwide, you're going to see mass demonstrations in every major city because April 15th has been decided internationally as the day to stop taking the crap from all those folks like Donald Trump who don't believe in global warming, who are sucking up to the fossil fuel industry. Now, I'm sure the demonstrations will be far more significant in Europe because, here in this country, we're pretty much pansies. We don't protest. But it's going to go off nationwide, April 15th. The International Day Against Exploitation. And I bet most of the listeners on the show, Mr. Nelson, don't even know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because it's not being reported on this side of the ocean.
Of course not. No, you guys are busy worried about, R. Kelly. Oh, my God. Hey, I had no respect for the guy before that, but dude, after that damn show, I was like, oh God. But I'm sorry. Let's go. Let's take some calls, Mr. Nelson.
All right.
Let's harass the listeners, man.
All right. Let's start with Deborah on line 4, calling from Delaware. She's on line 4. Deborah, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Nice clan state.
Hey, Carl. Hey, Mark. How are you?
Delaware. Tell me a little, sister, about Delaware. How liberal is Delaware?
I'm in Ohio.
What did he say, Delaware?
Oh, they gave me Delaware.
Ohio.
Oh, okay. Let's ask that one. That's even worse. How liberal is Ohio?
I was going to tell you about that, actually. I had a situation occur, and I wanted to share with you. I was on another platform, and there were some people calling in, and the gentleman who had to give a disclaimer that he wasn't racist was pointing out that he had did some research, and there was an agenda long ago to bring in brown people to mix with them, and he was explaining how white people are more revolutionist versus brown and black people because we are socialist and religious. And he said that because he was concerned about the dropping population rate or growth. And I found that interesting because that day I had read an article where the Chinese were tracking 1.8 million women and called them breed ready, ages 15 to 38. And they actually referenced The Handmaid's Tale. Did you see that?
No, I didn't, but, I was waiting. Was there a question in this?
No, but I just thought it was funny because their concern is sustaining their race.
Well, here's the thing, okay? What I like about it is how he said this to you, that the whites are more revolutionists while the blacks are more socialist or religious. So is he telling you that white folks are just faking it? They're not religious? They don't answer to any God or no higher form? Is that what he was subtly saying without realizing he was telling you that?
Well, I think a lot of them think that way.
Also, sister, to become president of the United States as a Republican, what state do you have to win in the primary?
Ohio. Mm-hmm.
And what family controls more than 75% of all the voting machines in Ohio?
What, Ron, what's his face?
Mitt Romney.
What's his name?
Mitt
Romney, yeah. That one, yeah.
So, folks, you got a sister here from Ohio telling you what's going on, okay? We live in a racist society. Wait, we live in a racist society where they control the voting, and you go out and feel good because you said, and they'll realize they've already decided who they're going to put in. I'm just talking.
And if I could just say one thing about this app, they're trying to figure out how this app was designed and who's getting the information.
You mean how the algorithm is being set up for it?
Exactly. But you know how they're doing it? Because women, and they're teaching even their kids to track their ovulation and their cycles on their iPhone.
There it is.
Write it down. But
folks, are you listening to what the sister is telling you? I come on this show, and every time I come on, somebody, well, what's your solutions? I go, one, stop putting your damn personal business on social media sites. Women are now talking about their periods and having their daughters talk about their periods on the internet.
Yeah.
And they're tracking you. Because, see, a lot of these white folks are paranoid because brown folks and black folks, they breed like rabbits. Meanwhile, white girls are going on the pill because they might be Catholic, but they're having sex, okay? And they don't want to get pregnant. So they feel that their population is being reduced while the black and browns are taking over.
Yes, and they do have low fertility rates. But I just found that very interesting because you kept saying they're going to bring back that Handmaid's Tale scenario. And if you Google what I said, breed ready, it actually references that scenario. And one other thing, and then I'm going to jump off, is did you hear about the Wise Food, Pepper's Food, that had to turn over the list of all the people who bought Pepper's Food from them to the government?
I did not, sister.
Well, that happened because they shared that information too. So I just thought I'd put it out there. You know, people are prepping, preparing, and they are concerned about their own.
And what I want you to know, sister, and what I want the listeners to know, okay, much of what the sister was sharing today I'm not familiar with. I'm writing it down because I have homework to do, too. I don't come on the show acting like I'm omniscient and know everything. And I appreciate the sister sharing this information because I have homework to do.
Yeah, I just hope you guys just take your information offline, please. Don't put your stuff
All right. Thanks, Deborah, because we got to take a short break. I'll let Mark take some more questions on the other side. 800-450-7876 as we're closing on the top of the hour, so some of our stations can identify them.
Welcome to the Carl Nelson Show.
On Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL radio and live around the world on WOLDCnews.com.
And thank you for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim, 6 o'clock, straight up on the East Coast. And got callers from all across the country who want to speak to Mark. Mark, you want to finish responding, or do you want to take another call?
Well, Mr. Nelson, the last time I was on your show, I discussed kleptocracy. Now, earlier we thought the sister was from Delaware when, in fact, she was from Ohio. But that helps me to segue into something that we discussed last time. I told your listeners that Nevada was one of the favorite tax havens for the kleptocrats in this country. Well, guess what other state, in fact, the preferred state for those who are hiding their money with corrupt banks in this country? especially those from outside the United States hiding their money. Delaware, Mr. Nelson. And you know why I'm telling you this?
Why?
Who's the only president you know that's never shared his tax returns?
45.
And guess where most of his financial holdings are held, and guess in what state?
Don't tell me Delaware.
Whoop, there it is. So for all you ignorant folks out there, especially for you white folks listening today who keep repeating, see, there's no collusion. The Mueller investigation has never been about collusion. The Mueller investigation has been about corruption. So you're preaching a negative. So, Mr. Nelson, if I'm on trial for bank robbery, and every time I'm found guilty of bank robbery, but there's no evidence of me rape, you go, see, there's no rape here. That's what's going on with this whole Mueller investigation. Every time another person gets indicted and convicted and sentenced for corruption, they come out and go, see, there's no collusion here. Mueller's not investigating collusion. That's not what the scope of his investigation is about. And I just don't get it. Why aren't the Democratic Party saying what I'm saying? Why do I come on the Carl Nelson show and say things that you don't hear from your so-called Democratic Party? Just take some calls, sir.
All right. 800-450-7876 on line 3. McDonald is reaching out. Just McDonald's in D.C. McDonald, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
District of Criminals.
You there, McDonald? All right, let's keep moving then. I'm not hearing McDonald. Let's go to line 2. Howard is calling from Los Angeles. Howard? Oh, she hung up on line 2. Okay, let's go to line 5 then. Kiki's calling from Iowa.
Hey, Mark, how are you? Hello?
Oh, we can hear you.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Mark, you still there? Oh, something's wrong. Something's wrong with our phones. Hang on a second, Kiki, and I'll tell the folks this. You know what happens when we get a lot of phone calls, and some of you probably have experienced this when you're on the line. They just kick you off. It's not that the folks in the studio are hanging up on you. They just the phone just goes in overload, and if you're on a weak line or something, you get kicked off. Oh, there he is. All right, Mark.
Hey, come on, Mr. Nelson. You got to be used to this by now.
I know.
I think we've only done one radio show together in the last, 2 years where either you and I didn't lose our internet or phone. Or in fact, they kind of spoiled us last time because I thought Trump was going to block me that time I came on back in February. Guess I shouldn't have told anybody I was coming on today. By the way, I still can't access the internet from home. Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson.
You're welcome. I
got to go fight the homeless in the library. So come on, give me some questions.
All right, Kiki's online waiting for you. Kiki?
Hey, Mark. How are you doing?
Every day is a holiday for me, Kiki. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So I want to ask you about. I remember you had.
You gonna ask me about 20 questions and try to say it's one?
No. It's just one. It's about the Prison Reform Act. And how Robert Kraft just went down for that. I have a question like...
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you. Say that again.
About the Prison Reform Act.
Oh, okay.
And, what are the... is that like a win for, the, minorities that are going to jail for drug charges? And also, because that passed, is that the reason why Robert Kraft was taken down?
When you say taken down, who are you, when you say Kraft, which Kraft are you referring to?
Robert, the one who owns the New England Patriots.
Oh, okay. All right, Mr. Nelson, this is an interesting question, but, Kiki, I think sometimes she's trying to be rhetorical. She just wants to see how honest I'm going to be with you folks. Both the Democratic Party and Republican Party, people like Hillary Clinton, major players, have money invested in the private prison industry. You're not going to see prison reform that's going to actually help the inmates. Trust me, folks. What you're going to see them do now is locking people up for stuff that before they couldn't even get arrested for. Things like writing a bad check and bouncing it. You can go to jail now for that. That's why you're seeing more juveniles going to jail. Since y'all took spanking out of the school, you idiots, when you think you're fighting the system. I think you would rather have your son get his butt whipped at school than to be put in some juvenile hall by some corrupt judge getting kickbacks from the private prison industry. You didn't even see it coming. So I've never been a big fan of so-called prison reform. I will say one person who's shaking the leaves, though, you have a newly elected governor here in California. Now, he hasn't changed the law in regards to death penalty, but what he has done is said that while he's governor, there will be no execution. And these folks are livid. Trump's already weighing in on it. Republicans around the country are weighing in on it because, they love bloodshed. They got to have those blood sacrifices. And he's not saying get rid of the death penalty. What he's saying is based on studies over the past 20 years, and I don't know if you're aware of this, Mr. Nelson, but something like I think it's 3 out of every 25 people on death row may actually be not guilty of the crime. And he's saying that while he's governor, that's 3 too many for him to execute. And I guess we have something like 700 people right now. I don't know how many we actually have, but he was saying there's a significant number of people on death row that he's not willing to take that chance that 3 out of 25 could be not guilty. So he's just going to freeze all death. No executions are going to happen while he's governor. But as far as prison reform goes, there's never really been much on prison reform because there's too much money invested. That's your new slave labor. And both the Democratic Party and Republican Party are heavily invested in it. For you who wear glasses out there, I don't care if they're sunglasses, reading glasses, they were probably made in a prison. 5 cents an hour. Seriously. McDonald's, McDonald's tells you how to go on welfare because they don't want to pay you enough, so they tell you how to get food stamps. But your uniform for McDonald's was made in a prison. That's what's going on in this country.
All right.
As far as Kraft goes, Kraft is just the woman involved with Kraft and all those people is a major donor to the Republican Party. We're going to sit here and talk about Kraft when we don't talk about Donald Trump and the Lolita Express. I came on this show, Mr. Nelson. As you know, I coach female surfers, okay? I instill my girls to have pride, okay? I don't allow them to get into this misogynist crap. I take little white girls with no self-esteem and put a foot in their butt and make them go out there and prove that they don't have to be like all these other girls that are out there whoring themselves, okay? And the thing that really it was hard for me, I'm like in 2016, okay, the Democratic Party is led by a woman whose husband is a frequent flyer on the Lolita Express, and the number one candidate from the Republican Party is a frequent flyer on the Lolita Express. And you folks are sitting here talking about Kraft? Look who you got in the damn White House. But, we had the Lolita Express in the White House back in the 90s, so I guess it's okay for, Hillary's cousin to be in there now. This country has gone to hell, Mr. Nelson. I'm sorry. Let's take another call.
All right. Let's see if McDonald is ready for us on line 3 now from the district. McDonald?
I'm ready.
Go ahead, McDonald. Line 3. Well, guess he's gone. All right, let's go to line 6. Justice calling from Pennsylvania. Justice? He's on line 6.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Yesterday I was listening to you and Craig, right? And I have a very keen ear, and I've heard Craig over and over on your show. And to me, yesterday, it just didn't sound like that was an authentic Craig. Now,
no, that wasn't Craig.
Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't Craig.
Okay. I thought that you said that was his name. I thought you said, yeah.
No, that was Greg. Greg.
Oh, Greg.
Greg Palast. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'm glad I got that cleared up in my own mind. Now, the brother that's on, when he said, Mark from Anaheim, when he said that the Palestinians are Negroes, that's totally not true and preposterous. Like, those are Arab people at best. And, they're part of the people who kicked the original black people out of that land 1,500 years ago. So, they're not authentic or original to that region either, those Palestinians. They're not. That's all I have to say. I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Peace.
Mark, you want to respond? Is Mark there?
I'm here. Can you hear me, Mr. Nelson?
I can hear you now.
I'm going to say this again. Jesus would have been a Palestinian, right?
He would have.
Yeah. because the land that Jesus was on is today called Palestine. You know, just like Iraq was Babylon. He's entitled to his opinion. I'm telling you, the folks right now that are being treated like crap over there are being treated like crap because they are darker than the white folks that are running that land. So if you want to come on this radio station and argue with me about who was here 1,500 years ago, I'm happy that just some Jewish organization paid you to come on this show today. But I don't waste time lying to folks. There is major oil on that land that so-called the Palestinians are on. And the Egyptians, along with the Israelis, have cut deals to get that oil out the ground without giving any of it to the people on that land. There was no Israel, as you know it today, until the United States and Great Britain got caught allowing the Jews to get killed in World War II. Muslims, Jews, and Christians got along just damn fine in Israel until Great Britain went over there and screwed things up and came up with the Balfour Declaration. So if you're going to come on this radio show and give you a little disinformation out and you're not telling the folks what I just said, I have nothing to say to you. Then you keep believing what you think you know, and I will keep knowing what I know. Let's move on.
800-450-7876. Ernest is next on line one, calling from B-More. Ernest, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Yeah, Mark, you're absolutely right. I study that, and they don't show it a lot of times, but a lot of the Palestinians are brown-skinned, dark people, African descent.
Well, brother, you're from Maryland, and I got a question for you, because you know I'm messing with you, right? I know your buddy is that Chicago cop that came out and dogged, Smollett on the TVs, and how he was just so devastated that this brother did this to the black community. What's your opinion about that brother from Chicago Police Department?
He's a coon.
How many black people do you think went to black sites in Chicago under his tutelage?
I think they said it was more than 100.
How many white folks have had their relatives sodomized by the archdiocese who covered it up of the Catholic Church in Chicago, and the only way they can cover that up is if the Chicago Police Department does not pursue criminal investigations under that black guy in Chicago. We will never know.
We never know.
Hang on, but we got a break coming up, brother, so hang on a second.
All right, stay with us, Ernest. 800-450-7876. Come back in a short time right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Put white people in Palestine and allow them to kill those people over there. And there you see in a lot of those villages massacre and kill them and leave them out. And do you think that the USS Liberty, 34 Americans was killed, 171 was injured, and nobody's able to talk about it? What do you think?
My God, you're sounding anti-Semitic. How dare you talk about the Israelis bombing a United States ship and claiming they didn't know it was a United States ship because that USS Liberty was monitoring the intelligence frequencies knowing that Israel was about to attack Egypt. You must be an anti-Semite to be talking about American Navy personnel killed and permanently maimed for life because the Israelis knowingly bombed the U.S. naval vessel. What's wrong with you, man?
Yeah, I'm an anti-Semite. Because the thing that gets me, all these people, they're supposed to love this country, and they won't even talk about the USS Liberty and won't let the family members talk about the USS Liberty. They won't even talk about them, but they'll be worried
about all the Israelis who spy for this country, spy for Israel, who've been arrested in this country. Let me just tell you, brother, I went to school at St. Andrews High School. One of the high schools I went to was St. Andrews High School in Charleston. It's gone now. And in Charleston, we had segregated neighborhoods, and there was a neighborhood where the streets were called Confederate Circle. I'm not making this up, folks. Most of the people who lived in that street, guess what they identified themselves as?
What?
Jews. And, Farrakhan got a bad rap. Farrakhan never said that 75% of Jews in this country were involved in slavery. What he said was 75% of the people who were getting money from the slave trade happened to be Jewish. There's a big difference. Because they weren't the ones actually owning slaves in the South. but they were in places like Delaware, Connecticut, all those port states, bringing the slaves in from Canada and all these other places. They were the brokers behind, they were the businessmen, okay? So, brother, I don't worry about the Rothschilds anymore because those days are kind of gone, so I'm going to recommend something for you here. There was a guy, and I had no idea you were going to call in today. This is synchronicity, Mr. Nelson, because I can't leave my phone, and I'm on dial-up, so I can't research stuff. There's a guy named Bradley Birkenfield. I doubt most of your listeners have ever heard of him, so y'all listen, write this down. Bradley Birkenfield, Birkenfeld. Bradley wrote a book called Lucifer's Banker. Folks, I highly recommend you get that book. Bradley Birkenfeld, Lucifer's Banker. And you will see who's running things, how they hide their money in offshore accounts. While you buy an Apple computer, for example, Apple is putting billions of their dollars, laundering it through Ireland, and then they take that money and put it in the offshore accounts and say, well, that money was never made here in the U.S., so I don't have to pay taxes on it in the U.S., while they call themselves a U.S. corporation. And there is a woman, her name is her name is Nicholas Shaxson. Now, she actually wrote a book called it's called Treasure Islands, Uncovering the Damage of Offshore Banking and Tax Havens. So when he wrote this book, Treasure Islands, Uncovering the Damage of Offshore Banking and Tax Havens, Nicholas Shaxson, Shaxson. These are folks who are letting you know. That's why Trump said only the idiots pay taxes, because they know how to get the loopholes. They know how to get the lobbyist groups in. And even when laws get passed, they know how to get Congress to stall on enforcing the law. You get Obama, we need to look forward. We can't look backwards. So he doesn't go after the corrupt bankers that caused the debacle, and it's getting ready to happen even worse than it was last time, because they didn't learn anything. They didn't get punished for it. And this time around, they're going to take most of our money out of our accounts to cover their losses. So they have no reason to stop what they're doing, because they're protected by taking the money from us, the middle class and whatever's left. I'm serious. That's the kleptocracy. So, yeah, the Rothschild was significant in the old days, but today with financing and banking being so digital and algorithms and new family money lines, they're not as powerful today or as influential as they were in the past. You got some new names out there, but more importantly, follow the money. So, Mr. Nelson, I mentioned this on the show again. I'm going to remind this to your listeners. Two of the most extraordinary investigations that got shut down pretty much in this country. One was called the Panama Papers. And the second one, I believe, now it's escaping my memory here. You had the Panama Papers, and then you had the other one where the woman from not Nice of Malta, but the island of Malta was blown up because she was actually doing research into it. But if you look at the Lux leaks, L-U-X leaks, or research the Panama Papers, the other one was Paradise Papers. Yeah, that journalist got killed in Malta and it shows you everybody's dirty. Queen Elizabeth, Vladimir Putin. You know who else is involved with that too, Mr. Nelson, right?
Who's that?
You ever heard of a guy named Joaquin Guzman?
Joaquin Guzman, yeah.
El Chapo.
Yeah, drug dealer.
The coke industries, all of them. You look up the Panama Papers or Paradise Papers, and you follow the money trail. But the book I recommend, Lucifer's Bank, Bradley Birkenfeld. And you guys will realize that the Rothschilds are like romper room compared to these guys and what they're doing and how they're fleecing us dry today. And Trump, his job is to protect the 1%. He believes he's following out what, Monroe said. Well, Monroe, back in the Founding Fathers when they said the opulent minority must be protected from the majority. And that's what the role of government is supposed to be. Not for you or me, for the 1%. And that's what they're carrying out.
All right. 800-450-7876. James is next. James is on line 3 calling from the district. James, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Yeah, hello to both of you. I got 2 questions real quick. Do you know anything about the 26 states and 13 states pending that's forcing contractors that work for those states to take an oath oath to Israel? And the other question is, do you know anything about the Israelis giving contraceptives to black Ethiopian Jews without their consent?
All right, well, as far as an old 26-state, 13-state, this is the problem I have. Okay, we have what's called the First Amendment right in this country. Now, right-wing Republicans are always talking about how they want to protect their gun rights, but they don't seem to be so anxious to talk about protecting the First Amendment rights. And a lot of folks, some are Democratic too, who are getting paid by certain lobbyist groups, have got legislation passed where if you even came out and talked about boycotting a company from Israel because of their practices, then you're guilty of a crime. You can go to prison for boycotting a company that happens to be an Israeli-based company. That's what's going on in this country. And so when you have one woman who happens to be a Muslim and she comes out and says she questions where these people are getting their money from and are we living a two-state loyalty in this country, and now she's attacked as being an anti-Semite, and now you're being shadow banned around on the Internet, you don't really need to have any 26-state or 13-state. And I'm just going to tell you, brother, it's all a fraud. The folks who are acting like they really love Israel, they really hate Israel. They do. These are the same folks that said that, Hitler got away with what he did because they weren't Christians. They're not friends of Israel. These folks are what you consider the libertarian, want no government restrictions, and of course that means religion too. And in Israel, the Orthodox Jews don't even recognize the state of Israel. So they finally shut the Orthodox Jews down by forcing them now to be conscripted too. Up until about 4 years ago, Netanyahu made it happen. Orthodox Jews could not be drafted into the Army. Now, what I was going to say earlier is I went to St. Andrews High School in Charleston, South Carolina, a long-gone school. Not only did you have Confederate Circle where the residents were Jewish, but practically every single boy who I went to school with who was Jewish, you know where they went after high school, Mr. Nelson?
Where?
Israel. You don't hear about the thousands of Jews in this country upon graduating high school go to Israel and serve 2 years in the Israeli Defense Force, then come back here. I couldn't do that. I couldn't go to Africa and serve for 2 years in the Congo and then come back here. Hell, look. So what they're accusing people of in ISIS or all these other countries, like they're going over and serving these other countries and they lose their U.S. citizenship? You don't see these U.S. citizens losing their citizenship for going over to Israel and serving for 2 years. I'll give you a good example, Mr. Will. You ever heard of a person called Deborah Winger?
Yeah. Actress?
Yeah. People know her from Urban Cowboy and some other movies. Deborah Winger went over there, and she didn't like throwing hand grenades, so she went AWOL. You think I'm making it up, folks? Do some research. We have thousands of people in this country, Mr. Nelson, who have been trained, which means they also know how to make bombs because they were working in the Israeli Defense Forces, and then they come back here after 2 years, and nobody says a damn thing about it. How is that possible? Oh, man, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble after this show. Hope that answers your question, brother. But the other stuff you were saying, I don't know anything about it, so I'm not going to speculate on it.
All right, because we're coming up on a break. Thank you for your call. 800-450-7876. If you're online, we will try to get to you. We'll take your calls after this short break. Mark from Anaheim on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
Hello, family. It's John Stevenson.
And know about the concentration camps because white folks knew about it. No plane ever dropped a bomb on a jammed railroad track going to those concentration camps. Not from the Allied forces, not from the United States. It was only when black tankers working under Patton came across one of the camps, and unlike the whites who kept it a secret, they were over an open net and reported what they found. By the way, those whites in that camp who were Jews had never seen a Schwarzer before, so they ran under the buildings and hid because they had never seen a dark-skinned human being. It was blacks who made it public what was being done to the Jews. And today you got these ignorant white Jews in this country treating black folks like they're a pariah. That's where we've come. And it's amazing how those who are oppressed become the oppressor. Because they're doing the same thing over there in Israel that the Afrikaners did during apartheid. And as Jimmy Carter said, that whole Palestinian issue is nothing but apartheid in Israel. Let's move on, Mr. Nelson.
All right. 800-450-7876, line 2. Howard's waiting for us. Howard's out in L.A. Howard, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Thanks for taking my call, Carl. The spook who kicked down the door. I had to meeting you around the CT Tech at King Hospital. You bought a prison there, and when the LAPD. And I met you again. Recall with the Tasha Harden's memorial.
Yeah,
here.
Brother. Okay.
Brother,
hold on, hang on, brother. Slow down a minute. Okay, for you folks out there, because we're coming up on April 29th soon, and I get sick and tired of people talking about Rodney King, and the brother brings up a very important point I just want to share with you. Rodney King was like the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. Latasha Hollins was the main reason why black folks set it off out here, because Latasha Hollins was a black girl shot in the back of the head, killed by a Korean store owner, and that Korean store owner got less time in jail than a white guy who kicked a dog here in L.A. Okay,
yeah,
the white guy got 7 months in jail. The Korean woman got probation, and she was allowed to leave the country. And then she came back, of course. But that's what – so people were just waiting to see what was going to happen with the Rodney King trial. And, of course, on the state level, nothing happened to those cops until George Herbert Walker Bush brought the federal government in. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, when you brought up the air traffic controllers, you remember when Reagan did all that with the air – I wasn't really aware about other atrocities happening with the air traffic controllers. But here, you remember at the time, you probably was here when you had a plane crash here in Los Angeles. One plane was taking off, another was landing, and then the person.
And you mean it hit the building that was a CIA building that nobody knew existed on the Bradley runway?
Yeah, well, Bradley runway wasn't existing at the time.
Well, they didn't call it the Bradley. There was a name Bradley runway at the time, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, brother. There was a sister. In fact, she was the first black female who was a prominent employee for CBS. And she had some information on some certain things going on with the U.S. government, and she's no longer with us either from one of those plane crashes. But I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was bringing up. There was a big plane crash here, and the lady that was handling the truck controller, she went to that crash course for the air traffic controllers. Everybody's really upset about that, especially with Reagan out here. And also, could you go maybe talk about these so-called scientists that are talking about global warming that Trump put together? Because I was listening to a radio program they were talking about.
I'm sorry, but it's just funny, the idea that Trump scientists would be for global warming, because what they're trying to do is debunk it. I'd be glad to address that, brother.
Yeah, because have you heard about a chunk of ice is breaking off Antarctica about the size, twice the size of Manhattan? They were talking about that's going to have a big effect on the planet as well. But I was just wondering if you would like to go through that, because it's just seems ironic that these people are supposed to be so intelligent and don't believe in science. I believe in science, and I don't have any of those degrees they're talking about. So that's what's happening. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. The brother's throwing a lot out there, so I'm going to try to be brief, Mr. Nelson, because I know we're winding down. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, they can find me at Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101, and that's on Facebook. Here we go again.
All right. Hopefully we didn't lose him again. I heard that dial tone come in. Oh, we did? Okay, they told him we did. Anyway, hopefully we'll get Mark back. Hopefully he'll call back in. These things happen from time to time. If you're out there and you're trying to speak to him, we'll try to make it up.
Hello, are you there?
Make questions brief.
Can you hear me?
He's back. Yeah, we can hear you now.
I'm starting to take this personally. All right, so what I was saying, if people want to reach me, they can find me at Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101, and that's on Facebook. That's the fan page. The group site was gone a long time ago. But if you send the group site, I'll let you know what the fan page is. So to answer the brother's question, because he did kind of throw a lot of, I just want to say this, okay? And thank you, Mr. Nelson, because it had not been for your show, I would not have known that there was going to be a memorial service in regards to Latasha Hollins' murder. And because I had listened to your show, I got right in my vehicle and hauled butt to South Los Angeles, and that's where I met the brother who just called in. And he and I had met before. I used to work at LAPD, and I was for Southeast Division. Latasha Hollins was killed in what is the area known as Southeast Patrol Division. So, also that's where Sam Cooke was killed. Sam Cooke was killed a few doors down from where Latasha Hollins was later murdered. Small world. So I'm just saying, the brother out there, I'm glad he brought that on because I wanted the listeners to do some research now. Latasha Hollins, that's who it was about, not Rodney King. Don't let other people tell your story. And when it comes to Antarctica, folks, I wish I was making this up, but if you really want to know, another reason why I think Kevin Spacey was taken down, you got to go back and watch seasons 4, 5, and the last season where they've already got rid of him. The guy who plays Petrov, of course, they're saying he's Putin, and you will see what's going on in Antarctica. By the way, Mr. Nuss, I should tell you, they talked about Cambridge Analytica. You go back and watch season 4 and 5 of House of Cards, and they told you about Cambridge Analytica long before you heard about it. But pretty much everything that's going on in the Trump administration was laid out in the House of Cards series. That's why it's gone. I love you, Robin Wright.
All right, let's keep
moving. They
moving.
don't think she ain't listening.
800-450-7876. Winston's next. He's on line 4, calling from D.C. Winston, you're on Mark from Anaheim.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. How's everything? Hope everything's well with you all. Mark,
he uses that term loosely, gentlemen, but I'll try to pretend to be one. Go ahead, sir.
Look, wasn't Israel the same so-called state that supported apartheid when de Klerk was there?
Not only did they support it, South Africa got most of their sophisticated weapons from Israel.
Yeah, he added all the accoutrements, huh?
Yes, sir.
And all these people that's in Israel claiming that Jews are nothing but Eastern Europeans.
That's correct. Well, here's the thing, okay? Seriously. Here's the thing, okay? Let's say you're living on a land right now, okay? There's only so much land there. If I put out an announcement saying, any Jew anywhere in the world, if you come here, we will give you a place to stay. How can you accomplish that unless you get rid of the people who are already staying on land? See what I'm saying? And that's essentially what they've done. They put out an open invitation to anybody who identifies as being Jewish to come home to their Jewish state, and they will be guaranteed in promised land. And they will do whatever it takes to remove whoever's on that land. A movie I highly recommend is a movie called 5 Broken Cameras. It came up on the Academy Award, which shocked the hell out of me because I can't believe that movie was even nominated. But that movie showed you what's really going on the Palestinian and the Palestinian land. But your question, sir.
Well, Mark, here's another thing now. I don't know how true this is, but Israel has control of the water and all the hospitals over there, don't they?
Water, hospital, electricity, and they're getting that oil. And they're not giving the Palestinians any money for the oil that's being drawn off the land that the Palestinians are living on.
That's unbelievable. Now, look, one more thing I want to
let's not forget this. And basically, ethnic cleansing.
Yeah, legalized.
Yes, sir.
Look, Mark, I did some research on prisons, mainly Unicor, and I don't know if this is correct or not.
Unicor and CCA are two of the biggest, but go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Well, I know that the public can't buy stock in Unicor. Unicor is financed by the bankers, by the Wall Street bankers, and they can finance it, don't have to pay interest. And all the stocks, A, B, and C stocks, are sold to people who are in corrections. So that right there denotes that it is a conspiracy, and it's a self-interest for those who are involved in corrections.
So, sir, have you heard about children being separated from their parents at the border when they try to come here?
Yes, I heard about that.
And have you heard that they claim they can't find those children, or it would take a hard effort to find those children?
I heard that, too.
Well, you know what I heard? They've been put to work in fields in places like Texas and Arizona in those private prisons. Oh, and it's not slave labor because I guess they're getting like 5 cents a day or whatever.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah, it's
And that's what it was all about when this white woman was pointing her finger in Obama's face. That white woman, who was the governor of Arizona, was sitting on the board for the private prison industry in Arizona, and they wanted to pass a proposition that would allow them to arrest far more brown-skinned people so they can make more money in their private prison industry. Had nothing to do with illegal immigration.
All right. Thanks for understanding. We got to take the break, Mark. Stand by. 800-450-7876. Speak to Mark for Anaheim. Take your calls next on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
Are you addicted to drugs or alcohol? Even if you think you might have a problem, call this number right now for Power.
For news that's close to home. Close to home. Listen, WOL, News Talk 1450 AM and 95.9 FM.
And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim, and the number to call to speak to him is 800-450-7876. Before we get back to him, let me just tell us some other folks are going to be here next week, actually. We're going to speak with Congresswoman Gwen Moore from Milwaukee, from Wisconsin. Actually, that's where the DNC is going to take place for the 2020 convention. Also, metaphysician Dr. B will be here as well. So if you're in the DMV, tell all your friends to keep their radios locked on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. So let's go back. Mark, you ready to take some more calls?
Well, you know, Mr. Nelson, Gwen Moore, love the sister. Got a lot of respect for her. But, you know, how come nobody's talking about Flint, Michigan anymore, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about the
dirty
water in Palestine. We don't have to go to the water in Palestine. And, you know, for all these colored folks who thought they were voting for change and we've arrived, how does Barack Hussein Obama go to Flint, Michigan and drink the water and say, see, the water ain't so bad here. Okay, I'm back on my plane now. And nobody talks about Flint.
Nope.
Democrat, Republican, Negro, white folks, it don't make a damn bit of difference, folks. I highly recommend you see the movie White Boy Ricky. Because, I mean, you know, he was from Detroit. And it shows you exactly what was going on in Detroit with the corruption back in those days. And he was a white boy. But he hung out with black people, so I guess they had to treat him like a Negro and gave him the longest sentence of any teenager in the history of the country at the time. So, it's sad because as we get closer to election year, there's going to be more divide and conquer. And the plan seems to be working. I mean, Mr. Nelson, I just recommended a book to your listeners if they want an idea on the dirty banks. Did you hear the name of the title of that book?
Yeah, repeat it again.
Lucifer's Banker. How much more obvious can you get, folks? And for you folks who don't know this, and I met him, the author, his name is Bradley Birkenfeld, okay? This guy was the major player for the Swiss bank, UBS, folks. You couldn't get any bigger in the banking industry, and he tells you everything. The sad thing is the U.S. Justice Department went after the Swiss to tell them to release their so-called private banking, but guess what country doesn't adhere to that rule, Mr. Nelson?
Not this one. No,
there you go. And that's why they hide their monies in Delaware and, you know, places like Wyoming, Nevada. Oh, yeah, several other states. Let's take some more calls because I know we're running out of time.
All right, 800-450-7876. Jay's calling from Florida. Jay's on line 5. Jay, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Hey, good day, good day.
Jay, how far are you from Jupiter?
Oh man, Mike, you must. Mark, I'm sorry, you must have a tracking device on my phone.
Well, listen, you know, let me explain to you why I asked you that. 2 of my surfers are from Jupiter. It's a small world, bro.
Wow, it's a very small world.
Don't you remember when Dick Rigger would come on and make fun of me and go, "Who's this Brandy surfing mom you always talking about? You got the hots for." Brandy's from Jupiter.
Got you,
Anyway,
got you.
Go ahead, brother.
Mark, I'm actually in Palm Beach Gardens. I'm like 10 minutes from Jupiter, so that's why I said.
Oh yeah. So did Kraft ever let you come in the back door?
Kraft?
Yeah.
Nah, he was on Singer Island, and I wouldn't have went in if he invited me, Mark.
No kidding, man. Hey, but don't worry about this much.
Woman at home,
Here's one good thing for you. Because Trump has so many drinking buddies in that area, they're not going to do any offshore drilling in that area.
Wow, no fracking, huh? No fracking along the coast of Palm Beach, huh?
There you go.
It's a lot of power concentrated on that island called Palm Beach, man. The Estee Lauders, the Fanhools who run the big sugar company.
A lot of those people got their money in the 70s and 80s from the cocaine cowboy days.
Yes, they did, man. Even going back to Flagler and Rockefeller establishing themselves on that island by taking it from black people, which was the black inhabitants who were there, which leads me to I have a couple comments, and then I do have a question for you, Mark.
Yes,
now,
sir.
My comments, bruh, you disseminate a lot of great and empowering information, bruh, and I so appreciate you doing so. And as a result of that, I think so many people defer to you, yet few people will challenge if you say something. And when they do, I think we get to a point where, or let me just say this, like when the brother called earlier, I agree with him about the term you used to describe the Palestinians in Israel. I don't think the term you used was appropriate, but I do agree that they are darker, just like the darker people in Venezuela and the darker people in Cuba and the darker people in these other places around the world. They are the ones who are.
Let me clarify, because there seemed to be a misunderstanding of what I said. What I stated was the people in Palestine right now, the darker ones, they are more Semitic than the so-called Jews. Is there an argument there?
No, I agree, but I don't think you use that term. I think you either called them, and correct me if I'm wrong, you either called them black or African or something to that effect.
No, what I said is those folks over there, as far as the Israelis see them, they are Negroes. It doesn't matter what you think they are.
Now, I agree with that. I don't know if it was worded like that, but I do agree with that, bro. So that leads me to my next comment.
Yes, sir.
Brother Steve Coakley.
Yes, sir.
I studied a lot of Brother Steve Coakley's research, and so he was so effective. He was a brilliant mind. He was a thorough researcher, and I'm sure you will agree, so much so that he would be banned from this station today. He was banned from TV and radio prior to making his transition. And he would emphatically state in his research whether he was talking about white power, the Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderberg, or the Boulay, that blacks were on these people's minds. So my question is, Mark, and I don't want to be labeled somebody who may be taking money from Jewish people, because I'm going to challenge something you said.
Go ahead.
You continue in good faith to say that it's not about race when you agree that we live in a racist system. When we talk about the white lady who was pointing her finger in Obama's face, she sat on the board of the for-profit prison, or on a board that promoted that, and she wanted to lock up more brown people. And when you talk about white boy Ricky, the reason he probably got his sentence that was longer because he hung around with black people. And we talk about the color boys who exposed the concentration camps in Germany. Racism, we live in a racist system, so that means it's based on race. So can you continue in good faith to say it's not about race when you admit that we live in a racist system? And by the way, Craig Hewlett says the same thing, that it's not about race. And I don't trust Craig at all. But Mark, I appreciate what you do, and I'll listen on the phone because I want to hear your response to my question.
Right. It's not about race. The sophisticated folks who are the racists know how to use the racial issue to divide us. I'm going to tell you, brother, I said this on Carl's show back in the 90s. Black folks in this country are getting screwed. Now, this is what I said on Carl's show in the 90s. But what you're not talking about on this show, because this is mostly black folks calling in, nobody is getting screwed more than the white, blue-collar, male worker. And they're getting screwed and allowed to get themselves screwed because they're being told that they're losing their jobs because they're the wrong color and the wrong plumbing when their jobs are going overseas and being automated. There are far more white folks in this country than blacks, brother. It ain't about race. They don't give a damn about poor whites any more than they give a damn about black folks. This country was created for white property owner men. In fact, I'm not making this up. You guys can look this up, too. There was actually a bill that was going to be introduced in the Congress back in 2015 that the only people who should have been allowed to vote in the 2016 election were property owners. I'm not making this up. This is 2015. They want to go back to that. White, wealthy property owners. Not poor whites, not women, not blacks, not browns. They will use race to divide us, but it ain't about race. They don't give a damn anymore about the Irish or the Italians that they did for the Negroes. And they killed just as many Italians and Irish before the Irish and Italians got smart and said, well, don't identify us as being Irish or Italian. Don't identify us from what country we're from. Start identifying us as being black or white. That's why when blacks come here from Palestine, when blacks come here, like a lot of surfers I have, they don't even know they're black till they come to the U.S. because in their country they're not identified as being black. This is the only country that's talking black this and black that and white this and black that. Other countries don't identify themselves as being by color. They're identified by what country they come from, brother. It ain't about black or white. It's about those who have and how they can. There's a saying, and in fact, I only seen one movie that said it. The great thing about the poor people, we can pay half the poor people to kill the other half. And they're doing it. We're turning on each other because we're sitting here worried about black and white. And don't get me wrong, brother. I'm not saying black folks are the most guilty because white folks will vote for Donald Trump because in their mind, after having a Negro in the White House, at least Donald Trump ain't a Negro. So we will go ahead and allow a white boy to rob us because that's better than having a Negro in the – I'm not saying these folks ain't racist, but I'm saying they're not accomplishing this to benefit poor white folks. They're just using these poor white folks because they're too ignorant to be realizing that they're being manipulated. So I hope that helps to better clarify what I'm saying about this.
Yeah, they stay on code for our friend who called from Florida. What's his name? Let me see. Jay. All right. 800-450-7876. Go to Long Island on line 2. John's
Long
waiting
Island.
John, you're on with Mark.
Who does your hair? Hey, man, leave them white girls in Massapequa alone, man.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
It's a small world, Mr. Nelson. Yeah, I used to chase women there, too.
All right, I'll make
we'll chase the time because we're racing the clock right here. So,
Yeah.
John, your question real quick.
All right, I'll make it real quick. One question. The flu season.
Yes, sir.
There's a weird strain going around, and hospitals, they can't treat it, cure it, and half the time they can't even diagnose it.
Correct.
And there's also a rumor going around that there's ethno-specific biological weapons being created.
Correct.
And I'll take the question. I'll take the answer up to you.
All right, let's go back to Israel. Let's go back to South Africa. I live down here in Orange County. Let's go to UC Irvine. I already told you, many of the wealthy Afrikaners, when Mandela took over, they fled to New Zealand. The rest, they came to Orange County, California. You had a Dr. Ford, so you folks writing this down, there was a Dr. Ford right at UC Irvine who was specifically creating an ethno-specific biological chemical weapon to be used in South Africa that would kill blacks and not likely to kill melanin-challenged folks. Think I'm making it up? 60 Minutes actually did a show on it. Irvine cops shot and killed this guy in his backyard after he had already killed one of his fellow professors at UC Irvine. I wish I was making this up. So you have documented even since the year 2000. So we're not even talking about back in the Steve Coakley days when they were talking about maybe AIDS came from all this. I'm talking in the last decade, okay? As far as, I hope I wrote this down here because you were saying ethnic-specific. Oh, flu strain. This is why I write down when you guys are calling in. So I'll just say this. The only time I ever had the flu, I'm not telling anybody not to take the vaccination. I'm just telling you. The only time I ever had the flu was in 1982 when the Marine Corps made me take a flu shot. I don't catch the flu. This year, Mr. Nelson, for 7.5 weeks, I fought a virus. And I kept hearing on the radio, there are lots of people going into the hospital with flu-like symptoms, but they don't have the flu. I suspect that there's something that's being sprayed out there because lots of people who don't get the flu are getting this flu-like symptom, but they're being told it's not the flu. Now, I don't eat a lot of garbage. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do drugs. So I was able to stay at home and fight this, but a lot of people ended up having to go into hospitals where they had to be treated by doctors, and they were told that they didn't have the flu. Now they're trying to tell you we're in round 2 of the flu season, so if you didn't take your flu shot last time, take it now. Now here's the dumbest thing, Mr. Nelson. I know we're running out of time. Let me just tell you how stupid people in this country are. They're telling you if you got vaccinated, you should be angry at somebody as myself who has not been vaccinated. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Nelson, if you were vaccinated, why would you care if I'm not vaccinated? You can't catch it if you were vaccinated, right?
Supposedly.
That's how stupid folks are. Thank you for the show, Mr. Nelson. Stay strong, and I know now I'm going to have all kinds of problems with my telephone. Later.
All right. Thanks, Mark.